Morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's edition of the MPC Markets Morning Call, 19th of March, 2026. The Fed kept rates unchanged overnight. I listened to the entirety of the press conference, which was pretty interesting in terms of the brutal honesty that Jerome Powell had in saying that he doesn't know, he doesn't think anyone knows what's going to happen, and was... And I think one quote which I sort of took away from it was he said if they ever were going to not do the dot plots, they joked in the meeting that this would be the one to not do the dot plots. Essentially, though, it was far less dovish. We had one of the voting members move from voting for cutting back to neutral, and essentially we had only one dissenter on the as opposed to two. So Powell also addressed Trump's attempt to obviously replace him. He had prepared remarks on this overall, but basically he said that he will stay in the position if they can't get Kevin Walsh confirmed. He will stay on the board. He didn't say that explicitly. He said, I will do what's in the best interest of the American people and the institution, which means he thinks that him staying is the best thing, particularly if they're just going to replace him with some idiot that's going to cut rates for no reason. They increased their growth and inflation targets from December. Employment targets remain the same. They weren't concerned about unemployment, despite the fact that jobs numbers have been weak because the unemployment rate has remained the same because they're not taking migrants anymore. So that participation rate has decreased. So yeah, they're pretty. Really, it sounds to me like they've priced in the possibility of maybe one cut this year now. And when he was asked to speculate on everything from when the war's going to end to where oil prices are going or whatever, and he was like, well, basically no one knows, and he doesn't know, and the Fed doesn't know. Essentially, the journalist edged on talking about Trump being the problem here, but and the source of the uncertainty, but. He kind of batted that away. There was a few giggles in the audience, though, when they knew that he was referring to him. As you can see, the market map here, red as. We had Micron report after the bell as well. They absolutely knocked it out of the park and rallied about 2% initially in the aftermarket. And then they've since fallen about 4%, pretty similar to price action to what happened with NVIDIA. Knocked it out of the park, and then I think investors were largely expecting that. Whether Wall Street estimates, Wall Street estimates are, when you've got a situation where 85% of companies beat, then Wall Street's purposely setting them low. So investor expectations were obviously higher than how much they knocked it out of the park. Basically, oil companies, the only one going back up. The Iranians have vowed revenge for killing some leader that they had yesterday. It's a little bit difficult to keep up when Trump's making various announcements. I can't pronounce half the names, and there's a new one every 6 hours. So excuse me for being a little bit ignorant there, but this is looking like it's going to extend out. Like Polymarkets have got. It's a 10% chance of finishing by the end of the month, which makes it a 4-week conflict at the very least. But you've got end of April is about 22 or 23% on Polymarkets at the moment. So look, we're not that's not. I think we're underestimating essentially what the damage this is going to do. We've gone from this will end in days to this will end in weeks. We're only a small step away from this will end in months. There are reports that China's isn't even dipping into its reserves yet, that it's secured supply from Russia. Russia could fill the hole. The Saudis have got their western port. largely diverting most of their oil capacity now as well. And there's a picture of or a satellite picture of there being an enormous amount of ships on that western port, which of that east-west pipeline that we spoke about. So obviously there would be some pretty heavy heavy protection over that, I would imagine, like Iron Dome for Israel sort of stuff, because that really does cause a shock. But the Iranians will be trying, I'm sure. We were discussing this in the office this morning. The new Supreme Leader, his father was the previous Supreme Leader. Trump's killed his wife and his father. I can't see them realistically, him being, emotionally, forgiving in any situation, let alone that sort of situation. So, and they've obviously got a propaganda machine over there. This is just, probably just as good as ours here. So yeah, there's no end in sight, basically. Crude, the only thing up, so it is a definite case of sell everything at the moment. Gold, silver, copper, platinum, they're all everything's getting hit because everyone's fearing rate hikes across the world, particularly now. There's no rate hikes on the table in the US, but he also didn't rule them out either. He said, I don't know, or we don't know, literally about 700 times. But we have had a situation in the past where with previous Iraq invasions where they haven't been particularly worried about the inflation shock, and then it feeds through the system and they've ended up cutting. So they're and that's what all these commodities would be down, particularly these store of value style things. They'll be worried about hiking rates, but if this goes for 3 months, to be honest, that bond market's will literally turn the ship around, because there'll be emergency rate cuts because it'll just absolutely savage global growth. So this is a very, very fine line to be walking here at the moment, and Trump is basically should not have kicked the hornet's nest, but here we are. They talked about looking through the shock, but in thinking about it, what we really what's really become quite obvious is that they just we can't keep looking through shocks if Trump just keeps giving us shocks. So we've had Liberation Day shock, which obviously was a tariff shock. We've had continued geopolitical shocks. We're at number 3 for the year at this point. The instability shock of trying to push criminal charges against your central banker. The debt's still horrible in the US. I don't know why people. I mean, it's a default traded by the US dollar, but because it's a safe haven. But I think you might end up finding you end up standing there with a brown paper bag of turd. In terms of holding US dollar as a safe haven, with $38 trillion in debt and literally no hope of looking like they're going to pay even the interest payments. So I think this move is probably the one you want to be taking advantage of, and dollar cost averaging or buying in these gold, silver style, those store of value style things. Bitcoin may classify for those that subscribe, but overall we're just going to be realistic and go, Trump's going to continue shocks. US dollar can't be a safe haven. I mean, he's already talking about Cuba. We've done Greenland, we've done Venezuela, we're Iran twice. Now talking about taking Cuba. They do have cobalt, they do have nickel, which is good for battery, and they do form a bit of a buffer shield against against their current allies who are fairly communist in nature. So look, I mean, who knows what's going to be next? It is only the 20th or the 19th of March, and more has happened in this year than you would ever imagine happens in the entire term of a president. So, scan the code, and if you can as well, I've been told yet again, Like and subscribe because we need people to follow. Follow the podcast on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify. It really helps us out and helps us get this out there. So if you can go to whatever platform you're listening to this on and, make a comment and subscribe to the channel, that would be awesome. If you do that, I'll give you another free month of Mosaic if you like. And scan the code and we'll... and you can get the 4 recommendation services, and we'll go and all our up-to-date news and our brand spanking new interactive maps and things like that. We actually, I've updated the software to 110 stocks now from the US and Australia. The ASX, if you want to have a look at that, that will be on Mosaic only this time around. So if you want to have a look at that, you can click on the link. It'll be published in the next hour or two. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. And we will speak again tomorrow.